Well, kids, welcome to another episode of Rim Shots with Sean right here in the Rock Rage Radio Network, brought to you by Barstools and Bandtalk, and another sponsor that I can't name yet, but I'm going to name very soon. I'm very excited. This gentleman needs no introduction to this show. He's been on before. He's a guy that appears on all our socials all the time. The one, the only Mr. Chris Catero, all the way from Phoenix, Arizona. How are you, sir?
Good. Thanks for having me on again, Sean.
Well, thank you for doing this. And we were talking the other night. So first off, let's cover the Imperfected banger tune. I didn't even know you had anything coming out, and all of a sudden you guys released this song. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I I kind of just threw it out into the world is what I did.
You did.
You know, I kind of got lazy. I've been doing the Imperfected thing for about 2 or 3 years now, and I got really busy with just life and work and things like that. And I've had this little backlog of some tunes that I wanted to put out, and so I finally got this one out. And this one features a guy named Matt Harris, who's a buddy of mine here in Phoenix. Another one of the local singer guys who are really good. As you are aware, in Phoenix we have a few pretty decent vocalists floating around over here.
Yeah.
It was just good getting Matt in. Matt has a really cool kind of, it's a little Perry Farrell-ish in a way. He's got an alt rock kind of voice. And I knew for this particular song, there was like a really sort of heavy thing turning into a poppy thing. And I thought Matt would be perfect for it. So I recruited him and he was super down with doing it. And I thought it turned out really well. It's an interesting song for me just because it's I didn't necessarily intend to be like dark and heavy and then light and airy suddenly in the chorus, but there it is.
It's got a very Daredevil, Marvel Comics kind of vibe to it. Like I can kind of see some rain and some darkness and some people duking it out in an alley, and it had that movie vibe. Very cool. But before we tackle that, so is this a recording project that you bring people in on? You know, you're the focal point. You bring people in. Explain to my viewers exactly what the Imperfected is.
Yeah, that's essentially what it is. So I do primarily for a living at this point in my career sync music.
Right.
Music for TV, movie, video games, whatever. And I was always an artist all my life, going up different bands, always had albums out, tour, whatever the case was. And when I got in heavily into sync music, I kind of let the artist side of me go by the wayside for a bit, because basically I started like refocusing my brain, which is hard to do as an artist, to like, now I'm going to start creating this music that's very specific for very specific reasons. I'm not going to own it anymore, because most of the time when you create stuff for libraries, they own it. Right. You finish a song, it ends there. You send it to the client, and the client goes, fantastic. And you're like, and that's done. So what am I doing next? Whereas as an artist, you release something, you're like, okay, we got this done, and now we're going to go do this with it and do that. And, there's the whole rigmarole that goes with it. But one of the things when I got into the sync music, I realized is that if I kept an artist profile, I could create a catalog of music for myself that I owned wholly. And then it got me to thinking like, okay, well, if I do this, then I could be sort of all over the map, just like I am in what I write for people. And that was an exciting thought process to me, because then it was like, I didn't have to deal with, it's going to sound shitty, I didn't have to deal with band guys anymore. Like it was, I was able to basically do what I thought was right for the song. And then sometimes I'll sing a song. Sometimes I'll get a guy in like I did with Matt on this, because, I have a very specific voice for certain things I do. Things I do well, I do well. And the things I don't do well, I don't do well. So, and with something like this, I'm not, having to adhere to my voice to any particular song. I can far outright my own vocal capabilities. So, I just think it was a fun thing to do. It's a bit, people ask me, and I think it's a little like a Trent Reznor situation, or even more so like the Gorillaz, which is rock at all, but it's like a collaborative thing that we could put music out and you know, and then I get to turn around and take all this stuff and kind of put it into some of the sync options that I have to try to get it placed, which realistically today, that is the one place where you could still make money, you
Well,
know,
and
with the music itself.
I think that if you have the opportunity to get anything out there in this day and age, I mean, it's really, I don't want to say lucky. I think it's fortunate because everybody knows. I mean, there's some luck involved, I guess. I mean, but to be able to actually put music out and have people, you know, even 10 people listen to it is significant. And you guys are getting great traction on this song and on your, you know, your streaming and your videos and stuff. I've been seeing the numbers. You must be pretty pleased about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's a lot. It's done a lot more than I ever kind of expected it to.
Right.
Um, I put, I put a little effort into it to work it like an artist, and I've been around long enough now that I know how to do that. And I have a few connections that have helped, get it in front of some eyes. But at the end of the day, I'm pleased with it because people still got to want to watch it or the video or listen to the song,
Right.
and it seems like that's been going pretty well so far with the stuff.
Absolutely. And I mean, and you mentioned work the song. And I mean, one of the things I talk to people about this all the time, and people think it's easy and it's not because I've done, I guess, 7 in the last year. 2 of them I helped out on were your friend of mine, Pete Lauren's 2 singles that were out. I gave Gina a hand with one of them, and Pete did his own with the second one. Certainly, my girlfriend Michelle, I've done hers. And I'm not going to give away the secrets because you know what? You and I work hard to kind of come up with them. But if somebody was to come to you and just basically say, is it an easy deal to work a song? You would say what to them?
I'd say no, it's not. But you have to be persistent with it. You have to throw yourself out there. The one thing there is nowadays is there's a lot of outlets.
Yeah.
If you're willing to jump in and look, there's a lot of people who want to promote your music or do things,
Right.
who are into what's going on. But you have to be persistent about it. You have to decide that that's something you really want to do. But there's this, I'm blessed in the fact that I come from having been in the business for so long that I do know some people and I know what to do and what not to do. I also know too that I'm in a different situation than say like a bunch of 25-year-old guys like just trying to go out. We're gonna go make it, man. I'm in a spot now where I have to kind of ask myself anything that I do, is the juice worth the squeeze?
Yeah.
So what am I going to do with this? How much am I going to spend on trying to maybe going into promotional avenues? Because it always costs money to promote. There's just no getting around that.
Yep.
And I always look at it now like, how much am I going to make on the song in return? Yeah. And it's a very capitalistic way of looking at it, but I'm also not trying to go out and conquer the world at this point either. So, I just it is what it is.
No,
I enjoy what I'm doing and I try to put it out.
Well, it's a great point because I mean, this term organic growth to me has always been a little bit of a white whale because I mean, organic growth would imply that you put it out there and just a bunch of people like it so much that they pick up on it and you tell 2 friends and it's like that old shampoo commercial and all of a sudden. But organic growth really in this day and age is kind of a bit of a farce because you're up against the majors all the time and they are putting huge resources behind something, yet you're told, no, don't do that. Go organically when the majors aren't doing it organically.
Yeah, I mean, the organic growth thing, it is a farce from the macro, right? Not to say that it doesn't happen. It happens at times, but it's more of the pink unicorn than the workhorse, right? It just is. So you have to try to get yourself in front of people, and even when you do get yourself in front of people, we're kind of in a day and age where people aren't as open to newer music. We're competing with 60 years of rock and roll, whether we like it or not. It is what it is. So you kind of want to try to get out there, get stuff out. Like, again, for me, I don't envy bands that are going out that are trying to, make it, at this point in time. It's probably one of the hardest things you could ever do. I would almost think it's easier to win the lottery than make
Now,
it big as a rock and roller right now.
absolutely. Absolutely. And not to sound like a downer, but I mean it's funny because everybody has this mindset, like the do it yourself age, and they all I'll go and I'll Google it, and this is what I found. And one of the ones that for me that I always kind of, and it typically comes if I work with a country artist. So I'm gonna pay for radio tracking. Well, once you save your money, I can tell you it's five plays. If you're, you know what I mean? Like it's I wouldn't call it good money spent. And a lot of people that I talk to in the business say that, that's one of the things where people are kind of trying to play a game that's not really a real game. So, I mean, I don't know what you do, man. You just got to put your nose to the grindstone and just keep at her, correct?
Well, yeah, you do though. You're correct though in one thing, that there's a lot of people out there who are happy to take your money
Yeah.
to get you somewhere that doesn't really get you anywhere. You kind of have to be able to, where, it's a business. The music business, you've always been swimming with sharks, no matter what. The only way you learn is you get eaten a few times and spit back out, and you go, well, that didn't work. Let's try this then, and today I do notice there's just so many people out there who are willing to take $1 from an artist without, really having any intention of doing anything on a larger level. But then there's people out there who really do try to help, and you try to, when you find somebody who's being open and honest about what they're doing, and they're legitimately trying to help. Like, I got to give a shout out to our mutual friend now, Gina Giuliano. She's great. She's very reasonable about what she charges for artists to help promote, and she's very into it. Like, she takes pride in working with artists that she thinks she can do something with. And, at the end of the day, that's all you can ask for, really.
So a little game, because I want to prove a point that I always prove, and people are like, oh my God, here he goes again. But this is proven. So I meet your friend and mine, Mr. Bobby Sisk, who, and God love Bobby.
Yeah.
We got to get him off the pot and get some stuff out there, man. He's recording the stereo with whatever the heck he's doing. But anyway, that's another story. But Bobby introduces me to you. I interview you. You introduce me to Alan Niven. I interview Alan Niven, and we'll talk about Alan in a minute. And then I get introduced to Pete Lauren. And Pete Lauren, out of the blue, is like, yeah, I got a single. Would you share it? And he's working with Gina. And she comes around and says, yes, I meet Pete through Chris Catero. So, and I'm in Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is the east coast of Canada, and you guys are all on the west coast. Yet we both have these connections, and you're a guy that when I have a question about sync licensing, for example, I'll shoot you a text. And so people need to understand this is how this business works, more so than ever before. Right?
I think I lost you for a second there. Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Lost you at the very end of your thing. I'm good now. I think I hear you now.
Yeah. Well, this is how this business works, right? It's get to know people, treat them right, don't ask them for anything. If they're willing to give, help them out, and that's how the business works.
Oh yeah, for sure. I've always been a pay it forward kind of person. When I was younger and I was trying to make it as an artist and doing things, there was literally nobody to help me. And I paid for every bit of knowledge that I knew, whether it came out of my pocketbook or my hide, one way or the other, I somehow paid for it. So when it goes back to, when I got into positions where I could connect people and I can make things happen for people, I just feel like it's the right thing to do if you really love music. B, it's good karma. And if I can help somebody avoid the pitfalls that I ran through, for sure. Like Pete called me and asked me about, some questions. It's funny because you think about guys like, especially say like Pete, who, he had some fame and fortune with Trickster. But, in the modern day, it's a new world of how to promote things, you know. And Pete called me to pick my brain, which I was happy to tell him, you know, what I could tell him and point him in directions and whatnot. But that's how this kind of works. You definitely, a lot of success in the music business comes down to who you know and your personality, you know, of how you, what you're willing to do, and ingratiating yourself by just being you. You know, I've known a lot of guys who were great players or great at what they do who were just terrible as people, and it just always prevented them from taking steps forward in the music business. And they'd be really mad about it. You know, and I pointed out, like, you gotta, you know what, you gotta be more personable with people. You gotta realize that, you know, it's a give and take situation, and who you know, is as big as how well you play sometimes.
Absolutely. Probably more so. But so which leads me to another project that you're working on, and we mentioned Alan, and Alan came on my show, and he was absolutely hilarious. Right around the time, it was about 2 weeks from Guns N' Roses was playing up here, and of course he was a former manager at Guns N' Roses, and he was, you know, pretty frank
Yeah.
about what he thought about all that. But you're working on a project for him that involves a book that he has coming out. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Well, yeah, Alan. So Alan has a great book coming out in June called Sound and Fury, and Alan, me and a whole bunch of other people who are on Alan's circle there have been for a while now saying, dude, you got to do a book. You should do a book.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've harped on him a lot. But what's funny is he finally decides, okay, I'm going to do a book. But he decided to do something that we talked about it beforehand, which I thought was, you know, I thought this was a great idea, was he wanted to do, instead of the, you know, the I was born and here I am kind of A to Z sort of book. Um, just do a collection of rock and roll stories. The dude has literally been all over the map, and he's lived more music life than just about anybody I know. He's had his hands and mitts on so many things that ended up becoming large and successful. And Alan's been a really good friend of mine for a long time. We do production together, still to this day, on certain projects. And so when it came time to do this book, I thought to myself, I kind of pushed at him. You know, I had gone through, he would send me chapters and he'd go, what do you think? You know, and he's a brilliant writer, by the way. Like most writers wish they could write like Alan, which is pretty crazy, you know, how great he is at that. But after reading him, you know, and I was a little bit of the also the historian in the book, we would pick each other. He goes, well, because he's told me so many stories over the years that I would, you know, well, what about this story? What about, oh yeah, I forgot about that. And he'd write it down. Then he'd go write a chapter. And we did this for quite a while, till he got to where he thought he had the book done. But I got the idea, and I thought, well, you know, what if we did a soundtrack single to the book? I mean, music is a huge part of Alan's, it's the reason why anybody wants to pick up the book. I don't really see anybody doing stuff like this that much.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I kind of had a piece of music that I thought he'd connect to that I had written, and I sent it to him, and you know, we kind of collaborated on it, and it's going to be what will be actually the next Imperfected song. It's going to be the title track of the book, Sound and Fury, and our buddy Bobby Sisk is going to be singing it.
You're gonna make sure he gets that take, because you know, and I know with Bobby, right? It's not good enough. It's not. He'll send me stuff, and it's funny, Chris. It'll be like, "What do you think? It's great. Well, what do you think? I think it's great." And he's just like, he's looking for me to say it sucks, and it's like, you know, the guy just, you know, I'd love for him to actually get something out to the world, because he's ridiculously talented, you know, and I know. Two funny stories.
When he wants to hear something sucks, I'll send it to him.
Yeah. I asked Alan about this book, and he was widely quoted in it.
Yeah.
And he informed me that he had nothing to do with this whatsoever, and probably a lot of the stories were BS, which was interesting. And the other funny Alan story was, I asked him about when Don Henley played with Guns N' Roses, the American Music Award. I don't know if he told you that story, but he said feather drummer, and I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, they got him in there because Steve Nadler had broke his hand, And he said that Slash basically went up to him in the rehearsal and said, "We can't hear the drums. He's not hitting hard enough." And he had to go tell Don Henley to hit the drums or they weren't going to be able to use them. So that was a great story too, right? So
Right.
yeah. So and you know
Yeah, go hit your drums, Henley. What are you doing?
right. I mean, you know, and you know, Don Henley. I mean, you know, Alan Niven. He was describing that book as similar to the manager in Spinal Tap. And I don't think he liked that description that much, but anyway. So the next Imperfected song is going to be for Alan's book, and we will definitely want to talk to him and get that out there because I'll love to promote that and grab that. When do you think you're going to get to work on that, or have you started to get to work on that?
The song is done. I'm in the middle of working on the video for it, which I'll get done. Alan and I have been going back and forth on it. If you saw like basically all the video work that the Imperfected has been me. Basically, I'm sort of a jack of all trades, master of none. But
I don't know about none.
But you know, I get in.
I
Well,
prefer to call
master of
you.
some maybe, or hopefully.
I don't know. You're Swiss Army knife as far as I'm concerned, because I mean, like you do it all, and you're also a guy to me that I think looks into stuff and makes sure you know how to do it before you're going to release it to the world, which is something because I'm not that guy. I'm the good enough guy. You know what I mean? So admirable. Usually it's not bass players that are like that. So.
Well, you know what though? I have a theory on this though with bass players though. So I actually think when you like if you look back, like say somebody like Roger Glover as a producer and things like that, bass players were the one guy in the band who realistically listens to everybody. I've got to listen to the drums, obviously, to groove with the drums. I've got to listen to harmonically what's going on with the guitars and the vocal line, so we're not stepping or creating weird notes. You know, and I have this little, you know, theory there's certain bass players who've made pretty good producers over the years.
I'd agree with that.
I think that's why, because we tend to listen to everything.
I would totally agree with that. And you're right. You know, I just joke around. There's the one guy in the band that rarely carries gear, but that's not true. We know that's not true, right?
In my
So
case, I was usually the biggest guy in the band, and I did end up carrying a lot of gear.
right, yeah. And we never want to pick on the singer because we know how that goes. That can go very, very terribly wrong. Kind of back to what you were talking about again. I'm finishing up this book. It's on the bass player theme. It's called "Running with the Devil." It's by Noel Monk, and it's a Van Halen, obviously Van Halen autobiography.
Yeah, the manager for Van Halen. Yeah,
Yeah, and I don't know if you read it, but the treatment of Michael Anthony, I read that part this morning, and it was horrific to me because I mean I grew up loving Van Halen, and you know he's not tremendously complimentary of any of the guys in that band, but Michael Anthony has not a bad word to say other than that he made probably a dumb deal by just kind of rolling over. Kind of want to get your thoughts on that, just as you know, as people in bands, you know, as you know, they're writing songs and what your thoughts are about, you know, giving up your publishing and those types of things, because that seems to be something that happens quite a bit.
well, you know, in Michael's case, he got a bum deal as far as I was concerned. I've read the books. And I've read enough stuff about that. You know, he was forced to eat a lot of shit, which was wildly uncool for that guy. And sometimes what happens if you're playing with somebody who writes all the music, they get a little possessive about certain things at some point and become a little egotistical about that. Which I think, you know, rightly, Eddie Van Halen's a genius and he wrote all the music. But at the same time, you know, bands tend to be a compilation of not only the players, but the personalities to me. And Michael, to me, was always kind of had his role within the band. And let's face it, that like the high harmonies and stuff that he did in that band were amazing. And he sort of stayed out of the way as a bass player. Which, you know, if you put like I'd always read that they had talked about getting Billy Sheehan in the band at one point to replace him.
Yeah.
And I always felt like that would have been a nightmare.
Yeah.
You know, two guys just playing over each other eventually. You know, successful bands always have guys who are the team player.
Yeah.
There's always going to be a couple guys who are going to be the strong-willed to make, make the decisions, write the music, whatever. But there's always also going to be guys who are there to kind of support whatever those decisions are, and they're just as important in in the complex makeup of bands in general. So, but I do believe, though, one of the things when you're talking about publishing, it's really important to hold on to your publishing. Now, in Michael's case, he didn't really write any songs, and he was being sort of, you can look at it two ways. From a writer's perspective, he's being gifted a 25% share to keep the peace within the band. That sometimes happens in bands, sometimes it doesn't. In the bands I've always been in, I've always been, if not the primary songwriter, then one of two, so to speak. And I've always just, to keep peace in the band, always just split everything evenly, because there's a lot of effort that goes into making a band work. There becomes a point in time, some point down the line, if you become as successful as they do, that kind of money probably corrupts that thinking a little bit.
Yeah.
But in greater scheme of things, though, I always encourage bands to try to hold on to their publishing. Even today, and I know some older rock star guys who've given up their publishing, who gave up their publishing a little too soon.
Right.
Guys come sniffing around in a predatory kind of manner. I'm not going to say who, but they're guys who we know. And brokered publishing deals that were worth a fraction of what they were really worth.
Yeah.
So, I just think that it's, in general, the whole thought process, hold on to your publishing, has always been there from the get-go. And I think it lives on to this day.
No, absolutely. Somebody today sent me, I did a post about the book, and somebody sent me the isolated bass and drum tracks from Everybody Wants Some, which were brilliant. And the thing that I posted was, this is what real people sound like when they play instruments. Just before the solo, if you go and find it, listen to it, the drums speed up just a little bit. And the bass follows it, and it's just such a cool vibe. So very, very, very cool stuff. And
that's the awesome thing about all that.
Right.
I love that. See, the organic feeling of all that stuff is my favorite kind of thing. It's like, I know you and I on social media are both have talked about our love of Filthy Animal Taylor from Motorhead, or Clive Burr.
Yeah.
Those guys were a little wonky in how they played. Steven Adler, you can say the same thing about, Appetite for Destruction. But man, it's put the vibe into the music.
Yeah.
And there's that human part of it that even I think people gravitate towards subconsciously. I think even if they don't understand it, they feel the push and the pull, and it's part of the attraction to it. I really do. Because when you hear something perfectly gridded or something that's been just overly perfected in the studio, it sounds very mechanical, and it doesn't have the same feeling that you would get if it was something that was more organic.
No, for sure. And Appetite for Destruction, and I've said this to anybody, my personal opinion of that record, there's not a lot of drums on it, but I think it's the most perfectly performed drum album ever because of what he doesn't play. Everything is just so perfect for the song, and it sounds like it could just fall apart at any second, but that's the beauty of it. It's just got this bounce. It's just got this really cool vibe.
Well, sometimes I think especially it happens with drummers a lot. Drummers can really shape the sound of the band by how they feel amongst things. I can tell you from my own personal experience, and I've gotten to play with some really good drummers over the years, some well-known, some not. But in the early days, I used to be in a metal blade act called War Dog, which in the early days featured a Latin drummer he'd been playing Latin stuff all of his life and kind of jumped into the metal thing, was young, loved metal. But there was a particular song that was based around a cumbia he used to play. And we turned it into this crazy thrash metal song, right? But when we eventually parted ways with him, And every drummer thereafter who tried to play this particular pattern correctly never could play it right.
Yep. Yep.
And it never felt the same. Like, and I'm talking like fantastic drummers came in after him, like really good drummers. And we had to ditch the song from the list because it never sounded right after that.
No, absolutely. And there's no shame in that. Everybody's got their thing, and I mean, it's just speaks volumes about somebody's style. So, so we got a bouncer. But where are my viewers going to find out more about Imperfect? I mean, I've been sharing that video like crazy, but where can they go get some more of that, sir?
Oh, theimperfected.com. You can go and see all the things that are going on with the band, and it'll shoot you over to all of our socials and whatnot. So that's the easy peasy one-stop shopping.
Chris Catero, a pleasure as always. We got to get that Bobby Sisk on the go, man. Get him doing something. I look forward to that new tune coming out soon.
Yeah, hopefully soon we'll do something. We'll get Bobby involved here, huh?
Right on. Peace, brother.
All right, take care, Sean.
Yeah.